It's your open source advocate, and I'm back with another video. Forgive me if my voice is a little bit gruff this week. I've had a little bit of a cold. I'm trying to get past it. But I wanted to give you guys something really great. And I've done a lot of videos on applications and on things that you can install and things that you can self-host and run. But one of the projects that I've never talked about is file compression. And I've been using it quite a bit lately. I use it all the time, but I've used it a lot lately, especially for a client that I've been setting up some systems for and doing backups and compressing those backups because they do get rather large and you want to be efficient with your disk space when you can. So using file compression is really important. And I started looking at the different file compression options. So I've got 3 of them today that we're going to talk about. And we're going to talk about 7-Zip. You've probably heard of 7-Zip, but you might not have realized that it was an open source project, and it is. It's based on GNU GPL or LGPL, as well as a few BSD licenses, so there's some different licenses going on with it. But it's really an excellent tool, and it works on Linux, it works on Windows, it works on Mac OS. A lot of people probably didn't realize that either. The next one is tar, so tar.bz, tar.gz, tar.bzip. Maybe you've seen these things in the past and you just weren't really sure what it was exactly, but you knew you had to do some kind of command to open up that file. Well, it's a compressed zip file, basically. And then probably the one that most people are familiar with is just zip. Zip in general, you'll see .zip, especially in Windows a lot of times you see .zip. In Linux world, you see a lot more of the tar.gz or the bzip2 or maybe the tar.xz. And occasionally you come across 7-Zip stuff, and I'm a little surprised that it's not used a little bit more than it actually is. It seems to have pretty good compression ratio, and it seems to be touted as one of the best compression ratios. So we're going to give that a test today. So what I thought I would do is I've set up a special folder, and I've got a few files here, or a few folders within this folder. So we're going to work inside of here. And I've got one that's audio only. I've got one that's documents only. I've got one that's basically a mixed bag of audio, video, and documents, and then I've got one that's video only. So I've basically just gone through and stuck a bunch of my videos that I've made, and only the ones that have video formatting on them. Now, they have audio in them, but we're going to call that video. Then we've got the audio only, where I've split off the audio for processing, and we'll compress that as well. And then we've got the one that's docs. So in here I've got an image, I've got a PDF, I've got some open source documents from LibreOffice, and a just regular text file, and then a PL2 file that's really a text file for security purpose. And then we've got the mixed bag that's really kind of a mix of video, audio, and different document types and things like that here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through the commands in the command line to compress these things. Now, if you just want to compress something, you can right-click it, whether it's Windows or Apple or anything else, and almost always in that context menu that comes up, there will be an option that says compress. Now, when you click on that, it's going to ask you to give it a name, and then depending on what you have installed on your system, it usually detects this. It'll ask you, like, how do you want to do this? Do you want to do zip, or do you want to do tar, or do you want to do 7-Zip? So in this case, it has XZ. I don't know what the difference is exactly between GZ and XZ, except that I think XZ maybe does a little bit better compression. It seems like that's what I read. And so there you go. There's your 3 options right there in the graphical user interface. If you prefer to do it through the GUI, you can. I just wanted to show you what the command line items are behind this stuff. But it's super easy to do this. Now, if you want to do this for multiple files, you would highlight the first file, and let's say you only want the first one and the second one. Again, you just hold, so nothing highlighted. I'm going to click on the first one. I'm going to hold the control key down on my keyboard and click on the next one, and now I can kind of randomly select anything I want while I'm holding that control key down. And then I can just right click, and again I can go to compress down here in the list, and it's going to give me the same options. What do I want to call it, and what kind of compression do I want to use? If you want everything, you can just do, with nothing highlighted, you can use Control and A, like all. On a Mac, you would use Command A instead. And then if you want to click one and then go down part way of the list, but click everything in between it, you hold Shift and click the next one in the list all the way down, and it'll highlight everything in between. And again, this works on Apple, it works on Windows, it works on Linux. They're all the same controls as far as that goes. So you can multi-select pretty easily, whether it's files, folders, doesn't matter. But I want to go through the command line commands with you guys today. So first thing we're going to do is look at how big these folders are uncompressed. So if we do the du and the space -hs and then space asterisk, that says tell me the size of all of the folders in in my current location, and it just shows us what this. So audio only is 142 meg, docs only is 396K, mixed bag is 361 megs, and then video only is 904 megs, almost a gigabyte, so not quite. So we've got, you know, various sizes of things here, and different sizes of stuff that we've got going on. And we're going to compress these. So we're going to compress them one at a time, and then we can actually put some folders together if you guys want to do that. I'll kind of think about it as I go through. And we're just going to use each type of compression to do this. So we're going to get into the compression right after this. I want to say thank you to all of my patrons over at Patreon and my subscribers on YouTube. Thank you so much for all of your support. I love doing this channel. I love making this media and this content for you. I hope you enjoy it as well. I do post all of the videos now over at Patreon after one of my patrons made the suggestion, and I don't know why it didn't dawn on me before that. But if you're interested in seeing them through Patreon and getting a notification through Patreon instead of through YouTube, or hoping that YouTube's algorithms happens to show it to you, jump over and become a supporter on Patreon, patreon.com. I've got the links in the description and the show notes. I appreciate your support. Thank you so much. Alright, to do the compression, we're going to use first the zip command, and then we'll do tar, and then we will go and do 7-zip. So we're going to kind of go in reverse order of what I showed you on the tabs up there in the document. But we'll do this and we'll kind of have fun with it. And actually we can do this through the CLI, and then we'll do it through the UI, and we'll see if what we get matches. How about that? We can see if we're doing something better in the CLI or something worse in the CLI, for one thing. So the command for zip is just zip, and first you have to install zip. So if you don't have it, depending on your distribution and where you're at with that, you may need to install it. But in Ubuntu and Debian-based systems, you just do sudo apt install zip. That's really it. Nothing special there. If you need tar and tar.gz, which is usually installed by default, you would just do sudo apt install tar. Just like this, and you would install the tar tool. We've already got it. We don't need to install it. And then for 7-zip, it is sudo, we would type sudo apt install p7zip-full. Just like that. And that's going to install everything you need for 7-zip to work. Now you can also install the 7-zip-rar. If you've ever gotten one of those files from online that was in pieces and it was like R01, R02, R03, like through a R0, you know, R97 or something, and then you had to run like a rar command as well to put all that stuff back together. That's kind of a chunked up, compressed file. It's another thing you can do, but rar is not open source as far as I know, so kind of use your own judgment on that one. These days, I don't know that you really have to rar things. I think used to, when internet speeds were slower, it was easier to download pieces and not have to worry about restarting a big download because it stopped halfway through and that kind of stuff. Before we had ways to do peer-to-peer where it could just pick up where it left off and so on. These days, I don't know that rar is absolutely necessary, but it is out there if you want it and need it. So that's how you install those things. Now, if you're running Arch or if you're running Fedora, it's going to be similar commands. Just use the repository system you've got on those systems. Same way for SUSE and those things, okay? Once you've got those installed, though, the commands should be basically the same. So we're going to do the audio file first, and we're going to do zip. And then just -r, which means recursive. So if we don't do the -r, it's going to zip up what we tell it, but that's all. If we do -r, it's going to zip up any folders and subfolders inside of those folders. So right now I just have files, but we'll zip up this entire compression demo after a while, and we'll want to use the -r in order to get everything compressed. So zip-r, then we're going to give it the archive name we want. So this kind of, you have to know what order things go in. So we're going to call this audio zip CLI.zip. Okay, I'm going to tell it I want .zip for the extension. And let's see, we're going to give this the folder name, which is audio. And I think we should be able to tab. If I get the capitalization, yes, there we go. And we want this folder basically to be archived. So we're just going to hit enter. It's going to archive it. It's going to show us all of the information that it's got while it's doing it. And that's it. So now we can do ls-al, and we can see that we've got our zip archive right here. And when you do ls-al, you can say --block -size, and we can say equals m for megabytes. That makes it a little easier to see. So 137 megabytes when we do a zip. So we can do, so we're going to do the du-hs asterisk again. And now we can see here, so audio only uncompressed is 142. When we compress it with the zip archive, it's 137. So we're going to compress it and basically take off, 5 megabytes essentially. Not a lot, but when you start thinking about big files where zip could help, that starts to make a difference. So we're looking at a small percentage here. We'll get some tables and some percentages up here in just a little bit. So now let's do gzip or tar. So we're going to do tar. And when you do tar, it has some flags that you have to run with it as well. I want to say that we should not use the hyphen though. ZVF, I believe, is the order. We're going to check and find out if I'm wrong here in a minute. And we're going to call this audio underscore tar underscore CLI dot tar dot gz. And then that's going to be the same folder. And it's going to start compressing just like the other one did. All right, so we got it all compressed. We're going to clear this out. We're going to do the DU again. And here we can see that basically tar.gz did almost the exact same compression. So these two are almost exactly identical as far as how well they compressed. All right, now let's try it with 7-zip. So we're going to do 7z and then A, which means archive. And then again, we're going to say audio 7z dash. I guess I should do underscores since I did that before. .7-zip. And we're going to tell it again, audio only. 7-zip not found. Oh, I don't have 7-zip installed. What? Really? Okay, let's do it. I thought I had it installed already on this machine, but I don't. So they even tell us, here's how you can install it, which is great. And yes, I want it. Pulled down pretty fast there. Let's do it again. So this shows you a little bit more information on what it's compressing. Now the time to compress, I believe, is going to be a little longer with 7-zip because you can see it's just now only doing the first file and it's showing you the percentage. But I do like that this information is here and it tells you it's going to compress 9 items, which is pretty great. And it's going to create this file. So it says it's creating this archive and then it shows you what it's doing. All right, so we're going to clear this and we'll do the du command again. All right. Let's see. Oh, 7-zip is up here at 135. So 7-zip beat them out by a couple of megabytes. I mean, not a huge amount, but again, as your archives get larger, this difference could start to matter. So just be aware that one did win on that one. So that's audio. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the UI because I know you guys are interested in that side of it. And basically, I'm just going to say, let's compress this guy. And we're going to do zip first. And we're going to call this audio only UI. We're going to say create. And it's done. So now if we just clear and do the DU again, we have audio only UI 137, audio zip CLI zip 137. So these are about the same. Let's just check out the XZ compression. So we'll go back and we'll say audio only, compress, and we're going to type choose tar.xz and again UI and create. All right, so that took a little bit longer. Let's go back and check out this DU information here. So tar.xz 135, so it got on the same level as 7-zip did earlier, so it did do a little bit better compression with the XZ versus the GZ. Pretty nice, so not bad. Let's just do the 7-zip through the UI and see if maybe they've got a little bit better secret sauce for us there. I think we can go ahead and close that. It may still be finishing something up there, but I think it's done. We're going to say compress, and we're going to choose 7-zip, and one more time UI. And we're going to hit create. Alright, if we look at the 7-zip from the UI, it's 135, so it's almost exactly the same as what we got by doing it to the CLI, so we don't really gain anything from the UI versus CLI there, other than just being able to click it versus type it in. Now you might be asking me, Brian, why on earth would I want to use the CLI if I can just right-click, choose it, give it a name, and hit go and let it run? And you're right, if you're doing this manually, the UI is perfectly fine. It is a great way to do this. It gives you really quick information. It makes it easy so you don't mistype something by accident. You can really choose what you want pretty easily as well with the control or the shift hotkeys and things like that. It's absolutely fine. The CLI is handy though when you want to script something out and have it happen on a cron job. So if you want something to happen every day at a certain time, this is where the CLI becomes very handy, and knowing how to do things in the CLI is very handy. So understanding that all of these things, everything I show you in Linux, whether it has a UI or not, there is a CLI command behind it somewhere, and you can do it in the command line. The benefit of the command line is being able to schedule things out and write scripts so that it goes in order. Now, there's some cool stuff that you can find, and maybe there's something in Linux that I don't know about, and if you guys do, let me know. But something where you can record your actions and then have the system play those back, kind of like you just did a practice run through of your script, and then you tell it, save that and save it as this type of file and run through that anytime you need to run through that to do this thing I asked you to do. I would say that would be the macro version of scripting, basically. Now, if there's a tool for that you guys know of, let me know what it is, and especially if it's open source, I would love to see it, try it out, see what I can do with it, and show it to you guys. But for me, being able to script out something like this is very important, and especially with things like the backups that you get from Proxmox. So you're backing up your VMs, those things take up a lot of space because it backs up the entire VM, and it takes up the same amount of size as the VMs. That's a big backup every time it does a backup. So compressing that is very important because it gives you back space that you might not have had. Much less compressing it if you want to move it off of that system and onto a remote system, whether it's a USB drive or over your network. Compressing it first and then moving it makes the moving part faster. So just understand that there's always a good reason for CLI stuff, and scripting in my book is one of the most powerful things that you can do in Bash and in Linux. Scripting is just so tremendously useful, and being able to understand how scripts work and write those scripts and do things to save yourself time in the long run is super useful. So instead of making you watch me go through the rest of these zip ups, I'm going to go through them, and then we're going to come back and basically look at a table of information of what turned out to be the best and which ones turned out to have the best compression, whether it was the UI or the CLI, which compression type, and so on. And then you guys will have that information to work from as you move forward. There we go. So we can kind of see what these really look like, and it makes it a little bit easier. So if we look at our 7-zips, which is this one here, 1.26 megabytes and 1.275. So in this case, the CLI did compress it a little bit better. If we look at our tar.gz, we know that it's bigger. It's 1.34 megabytes. And if we look at our tar.xz right here, which is our UI file, it's 127. So just barely bigger than our 7-zip in the CLI. And then if we look at our zips, we can see that they're both right along the same size. This one here in the CLI is just a little bit smaller, about just 1 megabyte smaller, in fact. So not too bad. And then if we look at the CLI zip, where we did this one is our 9 and this one is our zip. So we didn't really save anything, but the CLI does seem to make it smaller. So there's some interesting output there. I'm going to put all this stuff into the table real quick, and then I'll kind of go through that so you guys can kind of see what that all looks like without this weird look here. Alright, I've got the table completed here. I will put this out there in the show notes for you guys to be able to look at as well if you want to. So what we've got going here is basically the audio only folder, the docs only folder, the video only folder, and the mixed bag folder where I had a few of everything, and then finally the compression demo folder all together. Now I took out all of the zipped folders before I did this, so this is actually the size when it's just these folders put together. And it's 142 megabytes uncompressed, so this is what they were before we compressed them. And then here's our zip with the CLI, zip in the UI, tar in the CLI, which was the tar.gz, and then tar in the UI, which was the tar.xz, 7-zip CLI, and 7-zip UI. And then this last line is just how long it took on this compression folder in the UI to actually do the compression. So this is the zip, the XZ, and the 7-zip. You can see the zip is much faster, but the compression is less. I mean, noticeably less, because it almost looks like it didn't compress whenever you look at it at the gigabyte level. It did compress slightly. It did have a few less megabytes, but really it didn't compress it much. It really just kind of archived it and didn't do much compression there. If you're looking to save space, I would have to say that 7-zip definitely wins out in most categories. Now the tar.xz also seems to be very close to the 7-zip, and in some cases may have won just a little bit. But overall, it looks like 7-zip is really just kind of the tool. If you're looking to do scripting, definitely check out the 7-zip CLI stuff. It's very, very easy to use. It's just 7z space A, give it an archive name, tell it what you want to zip up, and let it run, and it'll do it. They do take longer, so kind of understand that. If you're on if you've got a certain time frame you've got to fit it in, definitely do some dry runs and see how long it's taking. Because if you have scheduled tasks that you don't want overlapping with what this is doing, then you want to make sure you've got plenty of space and plenty of gap in case something else happens that makes it run a little slower for some reason at that point. But this is compression, and this is open source compression, which is really the nice part about it. So you've got zip if you want to use it. This is, like I said, what you see in Windows 99.9% of the time. You've got tar.gz and tar.xz here. So the tar tools, basically, which you can get open source. Again, you can get this for Mac, for Linux. You don't see it very often in Windows, but you can get it for Windows as well. And then finally, you've got 7-zip, which again is Mac, Windows, and Linux, and very easy to use in my opinion. I've used 7-zip for years and years and years and years and years. I just never really thought about whether or not it was open source or anything else. I just used it because it was what was used by somebody who compressed something. I really used it to decompress things. Now I'm using it to make compressed folders, and it's really a terrific tool. I hope this video was useful for you. I hope you find it useful. And if you did, please like, subscribe, tell your friends about it so they can come on this open source journey with us. And I'll talk to you next time.